Celtics Beat is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Okay, what's up, everybody? New edition of Celtics Beat. I'd say I hope all are well, but if you watch the Celtics game in Utah, you're probably still a little sick to your stomach. If I look disheveled at all, like I haven't showered or anything like that, one, I don't know anything to you. I don't have to. And two, I sort of feel like crap after this thing. Kaufman, Valenti, and here for the first time in a little while, I don't even know the last time, but kind enough to rejoin us from The Athletic, Jared Weiss. How are you, man?
I'm phenomenal.
It looks beautiful where you are.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous 35-degree St. Patrick's Day Sunday, so it's going to be this guy's going to be full of booze in no time, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess if anyone had reason to celebrate after that Celtics loss, having nothing to do specifically with the defeat, it was the fact that eventually, later on in the night, Celtics did clinch a playoff spot. And so we know Boston's heading back to the playoffs. We've known that for a while. It's a foregone conclusion. Question, of course, will be seeding, sort of battling 1-3 right now. They've dipped to third, although still 2 games back of first and in a tie for second in that sense, but not the exact number of games played. I don't want to give you the popsicle headache with all of it, but this kind of, I think, Jared, is going to be more of it's always a big picture show, but more of a bigger picture. Okay, 10 games left before the playoffs do arrive. You know, the C's overall, I think people will be generally fine with a 4-2 trip if they can go out on Tuesday and, you know, win in Sacramento, beat Kyle Draper's Kings. That would be wonderful. But yeah, there are a lot of things that came out of that game in Utah and just general trends basically over the last few months that people are not happy about. And I want to, before we jump into everything, I want to read just some of the Twitter interaction last night, because my mentions, I couldn't even read through all of them, not because I didn't want to. They just were nuts. I tweeted out, among other tweets, bad loss, no doubt. Celtics were up by 19 points, nearly double digits late, blew it, should have had the W, but let's not pretend they weren't missing 3 starters either. 3 of their best defenders, too. No Horford, no Smart, obviously no Rob Williams, who could be playing soon. These big picture overreactions are wild. Tomorrow is a new day. So among the replies, Pats fan Mike, this team is missing something and not good enough. 28-point lead to the Nets, multiple 15-plus point leads blown, lost to the Rockets. I'm sorry you can't see it. Colin, Celtics are tied for third seed after having the best record in the NBA most of the season. Each loss makes the path to a championship more difficult, and they've been trending down for months. That's why there's worry. Dave says the absolute best position you can be in against the Celtics is down 15. You're guaranteed to win. Sam Berger, stop making excuses. How many times this year have we said bad loss? How many times have starters been missing? There's a reason they're missing. They're injury prone. Tatum has been terrible for over a month. The big picture is concern. I loved this one too. Sean, go watch the documentary on the 86 Celtics. Shout out, by the way, to NBC Sports Boston, a killer job on that. Then you will understand the standards we expect, the grit we know is possible, the determination we know that is needed, and then you will understand the overreactions with this group at times, just saying they accept losing. And Matt adds in there were so many tweets, but I'll read one more. Big picture, if Tatum sucks, you're not winning anything, and he has sucked of late. So, Jared, tell me, before I get to some specific questions about some of the 10,000-foot view, I guess, from fans, how are you feeling about this team right now as the playoffs are close?
I mean, clearly the problem is that Tatum sucks, apparently. So, I mean,
can I mention, though, I would have hit a 16-leg parlay last night. If 16 legs, if Tatum had just had 21 points. That's it. That shouldn't have been a big ask out of Jayson Tatum, but go ahead.
That's probably your fault for betting on that.
Yeah.
16-leg parlay, what the hell is that even?
I was screwing around.
So Tatum has not been that good lately, and do you start resting him on non-back-to-backs at this point? Do they even have a back-to-back left? I think they have 1 left, right? 2 left.
I'll double check it for you.
Yeah, they have 1 at home against Utah and then against Toronto the week after that. So I wonder if they're going to rest Tatum on some of these nights. I think they're past the point of, Brad Stevens initially defended Tatum playing so many minutes by saying it's actually helpful for Tatum to get these deep, like these 40-minute games during the regular season to help prepare him for the load of the playoffs. And that's true to a degree, but if it's happening twice a week, it's probably a little bit of overkill, right? So I think Tatum looks worn down. and I'm sure the hip is still bothering him from the other night. The wrist seems to still be an issue from what you can see out there, just like with his shot release looks a little bit off. He's not going for the rack the same way, like with the same level of ferocity that he had earlier in the year. We're seeing a lot more of those ugly floaters again. So Tatum is just a little bit off. I think you got to give him a little bit of time to rest here. There's only 10 games left, and they're close enough in the seeding that, they are in third place, but they're technically tied for second place. They're in second place. It's like we'll wait until the end of the season. Not to mention, I think they play Philly again,
coming up.
right? Yeah, fourth last game. So that one will basically serve as a tiebreaker if they're knotted up. So, we can still look at them as second place either way, but third place sounds bad. It really reflects the state of affairs anyway. But so they can afford to rest Tatum here and challenge their team to be like, all right, go win without Tatum. And they have to be able to demonstrate that because, frankly, they haven't been playing well with Tatum. They're not in sync with him on the crunch time offense. He is kind of stagnant, and the rest of the offense is stagnant, and a lot of these key moments at the end of games. And I think it'll be good for the team to just kind of get a couple chances to win those moments without him, just to remind themselves, like, we're at our best when we're all moving around, when we're working together. And, JT has, spent the whole year making really good reads, doing a good job passing out of double teams, trying to draw a crowd and then kick out. So it's not like Tatum doesn't know how to run the offense properly in crunch time. It's just we've just seen a lot of plays where they swing the ball to him and he's just straight up just stands there for 5 seconds waiting to square his guy up before doing nothing with it. And we've seen great players do this over the years. It's not like Jayson Tatum invented the crappy isolation in crunch time, but it doesn't work very often. It's the worst thing that you can do basically in those moments. And this team was winning when they didn't do that stuff. And the fourth quarter was all about trying to reinvigorate the ball movement as things slow down. And they've lost that. It's not like it's completely gone. If you watch a fourth quarter, you're going to see a few possessions in there where you're like, all right, this looks good. But there's more possessions where it doesn't look good. And honestly, at this point, maybe having one of the Jays sitting on a few of these nights will actually be beneficial for them.
Will he refuse it? Will he? I know that ultimately he doesn't have the final say. I just mean, is he going to have a problem with it? Because to your point, he does look worn down. And there's a big difference between a guy just looking off and a guy looking tired. You don't want a guy to look tired when the playoffs haven't even started yet. And you're hoping for a 2-month run with, in his case, him or any number of guys around them, on this team being at his absolute best, especially because, and I know this is in the back of his mind somewhere, the way he closed out the postseason last year was not a good final series against Golden State. He's been talking about it throughout the offseason, much at points of this season that, he knows what's at stake. He knows that there's an element of legacy long-term on the line, that was a series, that was a championship that they may look back as a missed opportunity last year. And everyone has been talking about them as a finals favorite, a championship favorite throughout the vast majority of this year.
Well, the last 15 games, they're 8-7. They have not been a legit, or not legit. They're still a legit contender. They've not been a front runner for months. No. That's changed. People still use full season numbers with this team. And I think that would kind of be like using full season numbers with last year's team. Last year's team flipped a switch in January or so, end of January, early February. And then they completely changed the way they played. They completely changed who they are. And we saw that team, for the most part, carried through in the playoffs. And obviously the playoffs are going to test you. You're going to recede into some of your bad habits and you try to break through those. That's okay. That's fine. That's how it goes. If you watch a champion play their game over the course of a playoff run, only a few of them really truly stuck to every one of their principles throughout the run. It's it kind of forces you to do things the hard way and the ugly way to get by. That's how it usually works in a playoff run. And right now we're seeing them playing playoff type basketball and it's not going well. And they're doing it against, they've had a few losses to teams that they should beat. And, you're not guaranteed to beat those teams, right? You should beat those teams. Utah, it's not like they're Houston. God forbid you lose again to Houston. I couldn't imagine the Celtics doing that. But Utah's a team where if you lose to them, you're like, okay, they at least play well. They have a few guys that can get hot. Walker Kessler is better than Rudy Gobert. It's you can see how you could lose to Utah. that Houston game is just like this weird anomaly where I don't know what they did the night before, but clearly they didn't show up to that game at all. And so, you look at the way that they're playing right now, it's like you can see that if they played the style of basketball and they truly were locked in, they truly had that extra level of effort, they were making cuts, they were making reads a little bit more aggressively, they were crashing the glass a little bit more aggressively, you could see them winning these games. And so I think there's definitely a component of like, it's the regular season. And, Jaylen Brown even said it, like, it's hard for them to get up for these games. And as bad as that sounds, it's kind of understandable when you think about where they've been and where they're trying to get to. But the problem is, like, you can't just walk into the playoffs playing like crap, and they're playing like crap. Like, it's pretty obvious.
So Evan, I know you've got a lot to say, and we'll do that. But just because we're on Tatum, I want to read this text or tweet or whatever from Muhammad. Says, depends, all of this, all these struggles, depends what you think about Tatum. Is he really an MVP type player? He seems like someone who can't gather himself when things go bad. When he unravels, it's pretty bad. Can we trust someone like that to get you to the promised land? Because right now I trust JB more. And I'm not putting, credence into that. I still believe, and I think most people would believe, Jayson Tatum is overall a better player than Jaylen Brown. But there's no question that in recent weeks, Brown has been the better player.
Yeah, I mean, Muhammad's making a good point in that we've seen Tatum have these moments where he recedes into, I'm saying it again, recedes into his bad habits. We saw it on that 2-for-1 in the Utah game where he came down and he just took a contested three right away. And we've seen a few times here where Tatum takes bad shots on the front end of a 2-for-1 that I think are pointless because you're then just putting yourself in a deeper hole to get a short possession shot off with more pressure on you. I'd rather lose a 2-for-1 opportunity to create a good look or squeeze the other end of a 2-for-1 opportunity to get a good look. What's the point of basically like when he comes down and he takes that shot, he's basically punting on the possession because it's just not a good shot. You can spend an extra 5 seconds to try to work a slightly better shot. And I think we see that Tatum sometimes gets tunnel vision for heat checking in these big moments. And I think Jaylen Brown shows a little bit more patience within the system, honestly, probably because he doesn't have the ball in his hands. Usually JT has the ball in his hands. Usually JB is getting shots set up for him. So there's times where JB will get a quick trigger on a spot up three where he's contested, but at least he didn't have the ball in his hands, and like it wasn't like as much of a choice to do that. Like he kind of had to do that in that moment a little bit more than JT does in those. And so I can see the perception that like people like Muhammad have of that JB is a better decision maker. But like also JB a lot of the time is kind of getting the decision fed to him. And it's really on JT or Smart to kind of read the whole floor and decide where they're going with it. And so that responsibility, I think, is another degree of difficulty. And if they had Jaylen make those reads, it's been more spotty in the past, Jaylen being able to really read the floor and make the smart game management decision. I think Tatum throughout the year has been really good in that, even when he's gone cold. And so I think that home team fans tend to doubt their stars, I think, more than other fans because they see their stars fail and they forget that other team stars fail all the time too. It's like Luka Doncic, he messes up all the time. He turns it over all the time in these big situations. He's a lot more risky than Tatum, honestly, but he also hits some of the most insane shots we've seen in our lifetime. So, if you compare him to like the other 25-year-old class of elite players that are kind of taking over the league, I think Tatum's probably on track with those guys, and I think he's fine, and I'm not really worried about building around him long term, especially when you just consider the context of like there is absolutely no way that the Celtics will ever get a player better than Jayson Tatum until they like draft somebody again in the top 3 10 years from now or something like that. There's nothing you can do about replacing Jayson Tatum, and there's no way that you can get out of Jayson Tatum and put yourself in a better position to succeed. So you gotta ride the Tatum wave all the way to the end of his career at this point.
Considering Tatum just turned 25, if the Celtics have a top 3 pick again sometime in the next decade, it sure as hell better be one that they acquired in a trade and not their own pick.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll stay with Tatum here. I will say that Brown's play recently has been unbelievable, and that's the reason why I have both of these guys. You don't trade either one of these guys. It's because sometimes one of them is not great, the other one is excellent, and that helps you win games. So I do want to stay on Tatum just because, again, final 10 games of the season, you're weighing certain things, health, position, how well the team's playing collectively all together. I know we've kind of danced around this, but I'm just going to ask Weiss point blank, is the most important thing for the Celtics between here and the start of the playoffs getting Jayson Tatum right? Because from where I'm sitting, like, you are not winning a title without him playing his best basketball. And if he's not going to be doing that, they have to find a way to make that happen. Am I wrong for that?
No, I mean, seeding is irrelevant to health.
Right.
It doesn't matter. The teams that win the championship are the tees that are the healthiest. It's pretty much always.
Except for the Philadelphia Eagles. They had all 22 starters healthy, lost the game.
Yeah, I mean, well, hey, it's not football.
It's a different sport, man.
I'm just pointing that out.
That's one game. That's anything can happen in one game. Look at what we've seen in March Madness lately. We're talking about a series, man, a best of 7.
Exactly, and that's why it's like your
go
health
tell
matters
Purdue,
because,
and everyone has to be healthy.
Yeah, you need to have your depth in place over the course of a series. You're going to win out in the end if you have all those guys healthy. And like, yeah, Tatum stopped playing well after the second round last year because he was not really healthy anymore. His legs were shot. The wrist injury was an issue for him. It's like he was beat up, and there was more to it. Like, Golden State had an incredible defensive game plan. They were built to stop him really well. We still see it when he faces the Warriors. Draymond Green just has his number. Like, Draymond just knows how to pinch him with the help rotations in a way that just nobody else in the game does, which makes sense. Draymond's the best defender in the NBA. So, like, JT needs to be at his freshest, and that's why I would rather just kind of rest him more over these last few games, keep his minutes deflated for a little while to kind of just like help him ease up a little bit, keep him down to the 30 mark a little bit, or at least close to the 30 mark. Probably ramp him up a little bit more as you get through this last stretch here of 10 games. But like, they gotta, like, this guy looks worn out. The guy's having terrible shooting nights. He's not getting up and getting good shots at the rack consistently the way he was before. It's like very apparent that he's just not the same. And it's on Mazzulla to like put his foot down and be like, you gotta rest. And we know JT hates it. And JT says this stuff all the time of like, I hate resting. But it's like, I don't think it's a hard sell to be like, I know you hate resting, but you probably hate losing the title more. So we're going to rest you in these games that really aren't that important. And
well, interestingly too, it's a 1-game sample, but just, recency bias, thinking about the Utah game, you watch through that game, and I'm sure a lot of people listening did, and the first quarter in particular and into the second quarter, and he's catching fire, and he's, having some of those heat check moments, but generally hitting his shots, not going over the top, taking a whole bunch of shots. I think he was like 4 out of 9 or whatever to start off, which is not a big number. But you're looking at it, it's like, man, all right, like I think maybe he's turning the corner a little bit. And just in the scope of the same game, he didn't have a single point in the second half, did he? And or if he did, he had like 1. Missed some bad shots. It just not even pretty, didn't even look good, to your point. Poor shot selection. It was just, it almost doesn't register with me what we're looking at sometimes with Jayson Tatum. It almost goes, I guess regression, as you noted before, is maybe the best way to look at it. And sort of, when I say regression, I mean back into some of the bad habits. Yeah,
and it's not just that. It's just, poor shot selection. That translates into effort on the defensive end. Then he's, hanging back because he's mad at not getting a foul call. Now the other team's 5 on 4. It does trickle down a little bit. And that's the thing that I wish didn't happen as much, is that, like, sometimes his bad shot selection or his lack of something leads to easy points to the other team. And now you got to really, really focus. And that team, and this team, frankly, and just Jared has said, has had a hard time focusing, especially the second half. And I don't know if it's just because they can't get up for these games, and I totally understand that, because it's like when the playoffs are a whole different animal. It's like a whole different season, but at the same time, these are somewhat important to some people out there, and like, especially for me, like, watching Grant actually hit shots last night was a huge, like, okay, finally, like, this guy's starting to put it together. We got, for certain guys, like, the last 10 games are going to be really important to get them in rhythm, to get them ready for the playoffs. And if the leader of the team isn't 100% in terms of certain avenues, it does, to me, it looks like right now, have a trickle down effect on the rest of the squad. It might be a little crazy though,
as long as Grant isn't taking the last shot of the night. But we'll get back to that. Before we move on with more of this program, Ev, tell the people about our brand new title sponsor of this program.
Yeah, we finally got there, guys. Massachusetts, listen up. This program finally brought to you by FanDuel. America's #1 sportsbook is finally now live. in Massachusetts, and new customers in Mass can get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. Finally, we all can bet on our favorite sports. Celtics, Patriots coming up, obviously, with the NFL draft. There's an opportunity there. The Bruins, who are just an absolute wagon at this point. Red Sox coming up. Of course, NCAA tournament is insane. The World Baseball Classic is hot right now. The Masters is coming up. A lot of things going on. And the one thing about FanDuel that I really like, and look, Adam mentioned it earlier, the same game parlays. It's just a fun time. You can put all these things together. But what I really like about FanDuel is the fact that there are certain groups of same game parlays that are really popular, and FanDuel will filter them out for you. It's like, hey, you looking for a same game parlay? Well, look at this one that everybody else is doing. And sometimes you go through them, you're like, I don't like that one. I don't like that. Maybe I'll add this instead of this. And it might be some inspiration for you there, thanks to our friends over at FanDuel. I know last night I had a same game parlay that was blown up just because the Celtics lost the game. It was the Celtics money line.
Celtics money line.
Oh, yeah, of course it was Celtics money line. It was Tatum 3+ threes made. It was Celtics money line. Jaylen 20+, Tatum 30+. Jaylen has been killing it lately. Tatum, might want to hold off on that for future betting purposes until he gets his life back together. But it's really, really easy. The interface is simple. Yeah, right. It's super simple and easy to use with FanDuel. I love it. It's just like the possibilities are endless. So don't miss your chance to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Doesn't matter if you lose, like me all the time. Also, just fade me all the time. If you see my bets online, just fade my ass. It's the best. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more on America's #1 sportsbook. That is FanDuel. 21+ and present in Massachusetts. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Hope is here. Gambling Help Line MA.org. That's gamblinghelplinema.org, or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support.
Guys, among the great many things that people were tweeting me about last night after that game, and really this has been fairly consistent in the last couple of months. I'm all too familiar, as you guys are, in your respective mentions from the first half of last year, when you just I can't even count the number of hashtag fire email tweets that I got. Well, I mean, it's Joe Mazzulla's time to go, apparently, according to the vocal minority that is social media. There are so many tweets. I will just read one of them from Christine, which is, sadly, it's looking like Boston has the wrong coach. It's hard to deny that his rotations are beyond questionable. His adjustments are non-existent. I think he gets exposed in the playoffs. On top of that, he's so arrogant with the media, most especially people like Jared Weiss, like he is a proven coach. It's hard to like him. I added the Jared Weiss part. Okay. Oh, what are we thinking, Jared? In terms of, yeah, it's like, wow, she's really been watching.
Jared, I forgot to tweet that for my burner account last night.
She's really been watching every presser. This is impressive. What do you think? Like, I don't need to tell you guys, and I don't need to tell the people listening that there are people out there that are really skeptical of Joe Mazzulla based on a litany of factors over the course of this year. We have, I think, generally, Evan, over the course of this year and with our various guests, really pumped up Joe. We've been in favor of Joe, liked the hiring, liked him being, getting the full head coach title and extension, not just the interim tag and all that. Like we are generally Joe Mazzulla supporters here on this program, but we acknowledge, even Bill Belichick is not without his flaws. So what is your level of confidence in Joe Mazzulla as he ramps up for his first playoff run as a head coach?
Say moderately confident. I mean,
that's not inspiring.
No, well, right now you shouldn't be inspired. It's too early to have a referendum on Joe. We'll see how he does in the playoffs. I can just say, as far as the media thing, like, yeah, he can be a pain in the ass at the podium, and then you talk to him afterwards, and he's great. And it's like he's doing a shtick at the podium. I don't know why he does it, why he leans into it so strongly, but like it's him doing an act clearly. Or he's just pissed off after a game. But like talking to him, he's great to talk to. when he's not in front of the mic. When he's in front of the mic, sometimes it's great and sometimes it's terrible. So, but I definitely really like Joe a lot. So I've enjoyed working with him so far this year. And so as far as his readiness, I think that most people don't know what adjustments actually are. So
yes.
Like most people will be like, there are no adjustments when they like change up their coverage, they change up their help, they change up their assignments, like they started running different actions, they switch from doing like spread pick and roll to horns actions to set up elbow touches, like stuff like that. Like there's tons of stuff that changes that people don't notice change. They only notice who's playing what minutes. That's all that people really notice. And hey, maybe the person that tweeted is going to respond like, no, they actually ran snap out at the 4:37 mark, and that was the same thing they did in the first quarter. So yeah, maybe, but like there's a lot more. Like actual adjustments are way smaller. Actual adjustments are like the guy doing the weak side help is going to lift from the block to the second hash mark. That you're going to do up to touch coverage on a pick instead of deep drop, where the big is still dropping below the screen, but instead of going down to the free throw line, he's going to be within an arm's reach of the screen. So like those are small adjustments that most people probably don't notice that do happen on a much more frequent basis. They're mostly going to notice like who started the second half, like when is Grant Williams checking in, that kind of thing. I think Joe is doing what most coaches do, and Joe, I think the things that I've frankly have asked Joe about a lot has been like, one, when he's calling plays in the second half on the fly, can they execute out of that? And that's been spotty. I don't know if that's on him. I mean, their plays aren't that complicated. There's not a ton of them. It's really, I guess it's a matter of chain of communication on the floor, and do guys know where they're going? So there's that, and then there's just like, I think the ability to recognize when your team is getting beat in a certain area. How does he respond to that? And I mean, in the Utah game, I think he did a nice job they were getting crushed on the glass, so he went triple big. And he tried to match Utah's size and adjust to that. That was like a pretty big adjustment. He didn't play Derrick White in the fourth quarter, and so people latched on to, you didn't play Derrick White in the fourth quarter, but like he needed to go with the bigs. It was a gamble whether to go with, I guess, Muscala, since Grant Williams was so hot, you had to play him at the 4, but like go with Muscala or go with Derrick White. I understand, the consternation over that because White's a much better player, but would you rather have Muscala's length? Like, does Derrick White's ability to crash the glass really matter against a team that's playing that big? It probably makes more sense to have Muscala's length. So the Utah game is a good example of him adjusting, but did they lose too much offensive flow? Maybe. At the end of the day, it's like they top-sided Grant Williams on the inbounds, so they didn't put anybody on the inbounder, so it set Grant up to fail if he didn't commit to the play. And because JT took that crappy 3, and they only had 5 seconds instead of they had 5 seconds to run a play there at the very end. Grant Williams didn't really have the time to be patient to set up the DHO after Utah was topsiding him. So he made the read, didn't work out. He at least tried to draw a foul, didn't work out at all. And maybe, I think most of the time Al Horford has the ball in that situation. Horford's bigger than he could finish. Grant was in a tough situation. They didn't have quite enough time for him to do what he probably wanted to do. But like that game would have felt, I think, a lot different if they were able to close that one out. So I think Joe is doing a decent job making adjustments. I think Joe is dealing with, frankly, a lot of guys that are just uninspired right now. And it's because last year they sucked for a long time, then they got their shit together and they were cruising. But I don't think I remember them being super strong in like the very last weeks of the season. I think they could maybe like slowed it down a little bit there. But this is a team that dominated so early that they're not in the midst of their rise anymore. They got so high, the only place they had to go was down. And so they're really, right now, I think they're looking at the season as they're just tired of the regular season. They want to get to the playoffs. And
is this a group, though, that is seasoned enough? I know the run it went on and most of that group is still here, but is this a team that is seasoned enough, veteran enough, even in its experience, never mind age, that it can just flip that switch come the playoffs?
Yeah. I mean, this team isn't as young as people think anymore. Jaylen and Jayson are in their mid-20s now. Al Horford is in his mid-50s now. Marcus Smart is deep into his prime at this point. Brogdon is deep into his prime. Derrick White's in his prime. Like this is actually a team in its prime now. And Rob Williams is no longer a future piece. Rob Williams has not demonstrated enough health for you to bank on his prime being something the Celtics can expect to be a fringe all-star caliber player. That's out the window now. It's like it'd be great if it happened, but you just can't bet on it anymore. He hasn't been that great this year. He's been solid this year, but he hasn't been as good as he was last year, and he is not healthy again. So, the Celtics are not a team on the rise. The Celtics are a team in their window, and they have the capability to open up another window down the road when Brown and Tatum are hitting like the 30s and they're going through their next contract. They definitely could do that, but this is their best chance. I mean, last year was their best. Whenever you make the finals, that's your best chance. There is no best chance after that. And right now, this is their best chance. And it was a hell of a bet by the organization to give Joe the extension instead of letting him try to win before, or letting him get the playoff tests before he won. That was a big bet by them. But Mazzulla has the basketball acumen to do it. It's just that being a head coach, it's less about your X and O structure. It's more about your decision-making, your ability to establish power, and your game management. And we saw that was a huge strength for Udoka last year. And as much as Udoka changed up the system in ways that were really beneficial for the team, he was good because he was able to kind of have that epiphany moment for this team. And they really cruised off of that epiphany. But they're past the epiphany now. You have a ton of energy and excitement when you first solve a problem. But then the hard part from there is recognizing that once you no longer have that fresh excitement of living in a new world, can you actually live in it? And they're having trouble doing that.
We'll take one quick break with Jared, tell you about our good friends. They've been around for weeks, and we hope they're not going anywhere because we want to keep eating their food, and we want you to do the same. HelloFresh, our pals at HelloFresh, eating well in the new year, and I know we're a few months into the new year. It can be kind of stressful, whether it's for the purposes of obviously your bank accounts and how much am I spending on food at the grocery store, or obviously just nutritional value, or how difficult is it how big a pain is it to make meals and just go through all the process of cutting up the ingredients, and do I have the right amount of this, the right amount of that? I've got 3 kids and a wife. My house is chaos at all times. HelloFresh it's simplifying is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, look, man, we talk about eating right, eating healthy, getting a good habits at the start of the year. I pushed it back to after the Super Bowl because things just are going to happen in the Super Bowl. Since the Super Bowl, I am down 7 pounds. Now, part of that is because I go to the gym a little more regularly than I was. But another part of that is the fact that I'm eating better. And HelloFresh helps you eat better, obviously, with their great ingredients. Everything is pretty, I would say, nutrition conscious. I think those of you that also sign up for HelloFresh would agree that they're pretty nutrition conscious. But the other big thing for me, and it's harder to do when you're not working with pre-portioned ingredients, is that portion control. Like, how many times, Adam, you don't really cook that much, but how many times you, the listener at home, have you cooked something and it's been really dynamite, really good, and you're like, you know what, I want to go back for seconds, right? So you go back, you put a little more on your plate. You put a little more on your plate than you should, right? I do all the time. Then you stuff yourself, and then you feel great because you ate so much and whatever. With HelloFresh, right, now you'll have leftovers, which is totally, I've had multiple times leftovers. The thing is with HelloFresh is you don't overeat. And that's the biggest thing for me as I continue to try and lose weight is portion control, never overeating, Kaufman. It's I don't know about you. I don't know your eating habits. We've never discussed this that much. But again, for me, it's easy to kind of over it. Yeah, they're not good. And with HelloFresh, they'd be a lot better. But it's just one of those things where HelloFresh, they control how much you eat and what you're eating. And if you're gonna load up on the good stuff, load up on all the vegetables and the fruits and things that are healthy for you, and the protein. Adam, who could forget about that protein?
You gotta have the hashtag protein. With over 35 weekly recipes, there are options that will help you achieve your goals, folks. You can choose calorie smart, carb smart recipes. You can customize select meals, swapping in those proteins or sides, whatever it may be. Upgrade the proteins because again, proteins, and you can even add it to a veggie dish if you really want to. We all want to save money this time of year, as mentioned. HelloFresh helps you save money year round. We're talking cheaper than the grocery store, 25% cheaper than takeout. And as someone whose kids insist upon takeout all the time, I'm into that savings, I can assure you. So Evan, he told you about the ingredients and all the great options for you. What we haven't told you about, folks, is the deal. You could save some money. Sign up for HelloFresh today. Go to HelloFresh.com. That is /Beat60, HelloFresh.com/Beat60. Use that promo code Beat60, 60% off plus free shipping. Beat60 for 60% off plus free shipping. All right, let's get back to Jared. Can we humor something that you just brought up, the big bet by the organization to, give Joe, obviously, the deal and the title and everything before the end of the season? I think there were, and I'll speak for myself here as well, I think there were so many people just calling for it to happen, or in my case, viewed it as, regardless of when it happened, viewed it as an inevitability. Like, Joe is going to be the head coach of this team. He is going to be here for years to come. That I honestly, and maybe part of it was how well they were playing at the time too, but I just didn't really even consider the other side of that coin. Let's say they hadn't. Doesn't matter. They did. But let's say they hadn't given him the title, given him the extension. They go out, they flame out in the second round of the playoffs. Do you think this team would have a different coach next year?
Maybe. That's a great question. Consider it would have to be a pretty bad flame out if they had a good season like they have, and then they made it and they lost to Milwaukee or Philly in a tough series. I think they would probably do a search and they would probably go with him. But like, if they completely fell on their face, like if they lost in the first round to like Miami or something like that, because Tyler Hero kept destroying their pick and roll coverage, that I could see them looking elsewhere. But Joe, I mean, like, I think people are too freaked out by Joe, who's like a little bit unconventional and stuff, but like they've been too freaked out by some of the rough edges around Joe's tenure that they're kind of missing that like he's had a really good season. Like they are very good. He did a phenomenal job weathering the storm early. Joe took a few. Joe ceded so much power to the players early on. I thought he went overboard with it, and I think that has come back to bite him as time has gone on. And I'm waiting to see him like really hold the Jays accountable, or like really hold people accountable, and he hasn't really done that yet. And Ime was great at that. Like Ime would just be like, this guy sucks right now. And it was incredibly entertaining. It was a lot of fun, and it worked. And he created the culture where he came in at a time where people were willing to accept that. And I think everyone's ego got so inflated after that run last year. It's really hard to then come in again as the next substitute and be able to put your foot down, especially when you walk into it being like, I'm not going to do that. I trust these guys. This is their team. It's really hard for Joe to then take the reins again after he kind of handed it to them. And so it does feel like Joe's been struggling through that a little bit. But also there just hasn't been much consistency for this team health-wise. And so we just don't get to see many stretches where he really has all of his pieces in a rhythm. And so if you get him to the playoffs and he's got most of his guys, I think things will look a lot better, frankly.
Yeah.
And
I was
like you said, we just can't bank on the health.
Yeah, I was going through, because we mentioned this a while ago, how the Celtics finished the season, and not totally sure if the Celtics finished the season really strong. They did. I'm going through. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3. This is awful podcasting, but I'm doing this kind of in real time.
Sorry, we're here for you. You need us to fill
15.
time?
Yeah, we'll wait.
It's 15. So they went 11-4 in the last 15 games. Including a huge win over Golden State at Golden State by almost 30. Beat the crap out of Sacramento, beat the crap out of Denver, beat the 9-point win against Oklahoma City, destroyed Utah. I mean, they had a 42-point win over the poor Wizards towards the end of the year. They were playing much better, and you felt much better going into the postseason about this particular team. It was just more about the health of Rob and how he would bounce back. And here we are again. Where is Rob in terms of like, how does he look when he comes back? How do they manage his minutes? One of the big things, Jared, that, and I know what your answer is going to be to this, because I think I understand kind of, we've been talking for several years in this show. I think I have an understanding of where you're going to lie on this, but everybody's been trying to throw some cold water on the double big lineup. And then of course they go triple big last night. Do you think it's in Boston's best interest to always roll with Rob and Al, or is it more match dependent as we get more towards the playoffs?
I think starting games, they're probably going to do double big, just because Al's been so good this year that you don't need, like, you're fine with him covering wings for the most part. And then I think just early in the games, being able to funnel everything into Rob, it's good for the team, because one, it takes a little bit of pressure on their point of attack defense to be great out the gate, and it allows them to really practice some of their weak side recovery stuff. So it's actually pretty good for having guys communicate and move horizontally across the floor and kind of get into that flow of really working together. So I actually think it's better for them to do that, because when they don't have Rob out there, it's like very switch heavy, and it's like you're almost playing a zone. I think you can sometimes get kind of like slow down a little bit, because you're not having to process as much when you're doing it that way. And then also with Rob out there, they are able to get out and run more because of all the plays he makes at the rim defensively. And so I think it's good for them to get out and run and have energy early on. So I would rather start with Rob and Al out there together. Al has been too good. You can't put him on the bench, so you can't start Derrick because of that. So I would stick with that double big lineup when they're healthy, just because of that one trait that Rob gives them the potential to get off and running early on. Even though their best lineup this year has been Al the 5 with White in there. And so that's how they're going to close most games, I presume. I don't think Rob's going to close games.
I agree.
Probably certain scenarios, but I mean, that's how it was last year. It's kind of how it's always been for the most part. Sometimes he did, but like Al Horford is close to leading the NBA in shooting. He's been like one of the best shooters in the NBA.
That's unbelievable, man.
Yeah,
he's
still playing really good defense. He's still making good reads on offense. Like, he's still a really good player. And so he's one of your best players, and you're going to close with him. And Rob is just not that guy right now. Rob is just not a persistent looming threat on each end in the way that he was last year. He still operates pretty well within his sphere, but like last year, he was just a ball of energy, breaking up stuff all over the place. And right now, he's more just kind of filling his role. More defensively, I think he's actually pretty fine. He's not quite there yet, but he's pretty fine. But just offensively, you just don't really feel his presence through the actions as much anymore. Most of what comes to him is really just cleanup stuff from the dunker spot and the occasional lob. But they haven't really found his rhythm being a functional part of the offense in the same way that he was last year. And so I think that it's possible that, I mean, I don't really see them bringing in Rob off the bench to start the games. I just don't think their lineups work that way so much. And they've had a pretty good rotation of like taking out Rob at a certain point and putting him back in with the certain lineups, that kind of thing. So they kind of have their balance figured out there. I think they can kind of do a lot of the same stuff from last year with that. And also I like having Malcolm working with Rob in the second unit, just because like he's someone that can get downhill and he can get Rob a lot of lob actions. So that makes sense. So yeah, I think start double big still for the most part, depending on your matchup. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who there could be. Horford still works against Miami. Horford still works against Brooklyn. So yeah, whoever they're going to see in the first round probably
Atlanta
fits with Horford starting. Atlanta, Horford works against Collins. So yeah, so they're going to start Robin and Al, I would assume.
Is that all what you expected, Evan, from Jared?
It's funny. I kind of thought that he would lean more into the matchup dependent thing, but he kind of cross matched a little bit.
Well, I did. It's those are the matchups, and it works for all those. Yeah.
Let's talk matchups, because you're sitting here, you're talking closing lineups, you're talking we were talking about Joe Mazzulla. Let's converge the group into the ball that loss against Utah and Derrick White. People are just, beside themselves, and I am one of them. Even when I try and explain it away to myself, about the fact that Derrick White did not play, despite playing reasonably well during the night. No Marcus Smart, obviously, did not play a single minute, not a moment of that fourth quarter. And I realized that Malcolm was playing really well. I realized wanting to have the bigs out there because of the size of Utah's players, and the what they were doing schematically speaking. But you just like Forsberg tweeted out, a little earlier today, just the larger sample size. Celtics have played 162 crunch time minutes this season. Derrick White has been on the floor for 55 and a half of those, so it's about 34%. Boston has played 60 overtime minutes this season. White has been on the floor for 16 of those, which is about 27%. It just feels like, last night being one example, I'm not saying it's why they lost. I'm not smart enough to know that, but I feel like there are many instances that a game will end. It will be a close loss, 1, 2, 3, 4 points. And Derrick White wasn't a part of it after having a pretty good night. And I'm sitting there going, all right, Joe, you know all this better than I do, no question. But where the hell was Derrick tonight? Why are we seeing any Derrick in the fourth quarter? Or why aren't we seeing Derrick on the floor late as part of a close and late situation? What is the hang up there? If there is one that has sort of, I don't want to say Derrick White's fallen out of favor. That's not the case, but he's just not getting these opportunities at these times that stupid fans like me sit and watch and say, where's Derrick?
You're not stupid because you're right. And, I said before that Joe wanted to match up the bigs for Utah, but it didn't work in the fourth quarter. And I think one of the complaints about Joe has been whether he responds to things not working in a timely manner. And if initially that was the timeouts, and I never had as big of a problem with the timeouts. At least early on, he was very much I want them to work through these issues. At a certain point, you got to start actually changing your process when it's not yielding results. But, he probably could have gone with White at some point in crunch time and recognized all right, this isn't really working for us. We need a better finisher. He also went with Sam Hauser instead of White at a certain point, where I don't know if because I think that was early in the quarter, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
Yeah, so it's maybe that was it's early in the quarter. White's probably going to close, and then he probably made a split decision potentially to go with, I guess, Muscala over White. And so, Cornette did not. Cornette matches up with Walker Kessler, but Kessler beat him. Muscala, I just didn't really think that he ended up making much of an impact at the rim for what they wanted him to do there. So it could have worked to just put White in there. And I would have rather had White in there for offensive reasons. Because if you're already not getting what you need defensively out of that lineup, then at that point, if it's not making a difference, you might as well just get in your better offensive decision makers. Also, White's shooting pretty well this year, so I'd rather have him out there just even as a shooter. Or if you're just looking for a shooter and you're choosing between Hauser, Muscala, and White, I'd definitely rather have White because he's close to being able to do a spot-up shot like those guys. Then there's just so much more for you. So, he's really been playing Hauser a lot lately, and it's generally okay if it's just Hauser versus Grant Williams or Peyton Pritchard, although I think Grant is proving that he's better than Sam Hauser, as if we really need to know that. So I don't know why they didn't just give him the minutes that Hauser's getting. But, Derrick White shouldn't be missing fourth quarters. There should be room for him. If White comes in at the 8-minute mark and then you only play him 3 minutes, you take him out at the 5-minute mark, then so be it. I just don't know. At a certain point, he must have. I feel like there were points in that fourth quarter where they could have been all right, this triple big lineup isn't working for us. We need more offensive invigoration and running off of makes or misses or both to be able to just outscore them because we're not getting the stops. And I think that's putting a White should have been the move. I agree with that.
All right, we got to let you go in another couple minutes here. So last thing for me, and then if Evan has anything else for you as well. But like I said, 10 games left in this season. You got the one left on the road trip. I think we're all in agreement that health is the priority over seeding. I think that's, when you have a good team, that's always the way. You're not as worried about matchups. Not that, I'm eager to see Miami in round one, as you alluded to before. But hopefully that won't happen, obviously. But what short of getting Jayson Tatum right and hoping that Rob can come back for a healthy postseason, what is the priority these last 10 games for anyone, be it a specific player, the team overall, for Joe to get himself in the right headspace? What are we focused in on here?
I think Joe needs to, the most important thing is that like Celtics are winning games and they're blowing them in the fourth quarter a lot of the time. So Joe needs to, and also I don't think it's the second units in the fourth quarter. It's really mostly these closing lineups. They come in either under duress because something was happening right before, or they just come in and they're kind of flat. And so Joe needs to, one, get the running mentality back. Like this team needs to be a running team again. They've lost a lot of their pace. Take the ball out of the Jays' hands in crunch time and really lean into Brogdon, Smart as your playmakers. There's been a few games here where the Jays were just like not making good plays, and then Brogdon or Smart would get in there and they would start attacking and actually getting the dribble penetration. So I think he needs to really lean into those guys running offense in the fourth quarter and get some fourth quarter flow. That's number one. Finding a way to get the Williamses both back in there in the regular rotation. Like I think we've seen now these last couple games, like Grant got back in there for these last two games and it's been playing really well. And like when Grant has confidence, he's hitting his shots, and his defense isn't quite as good this year as it was last year. Like guys are getting around him a little bit more. You know, Nickeil Alexander-Walker got around him in isolation for a big bucket. Or no, it was I think it was Taylor Horton-Tucker. Too many guys with three names. It was THT got by him for like a really nice bucket. Like sure, it's going to happen, but like that's a play in crunch time that I think Grant usually after that second dribble can stay just in front of him to wall him off, and Grant just couldn't do it. And so like I know Grant's been playing hurt. You know, he had some lower body stuff earlier in the year. I reported on his elbow thing. Like Grant's been playing hurt for a lot of the season. And maybe that explains a little bit of his defensive drop off, at least guarding on the perimeter. But generally, he's still better guarding the perimeter than most of their other backup options. So I think I think this has been a reminder that Grant should be out there. And so they need to find a clear home for him in the rotation, because if they're facing Miami in the first round, it is go time for Grant. Like Grant is a huge part of that matchup, and he needs to be 100% confident. And the team needs to know, like we don't know what the rotation is, man. Like we just haven't seen it consistently. They need to have a very clear rotation. They need to know, they don't want to be predictable to the point that the opponent knows where they are, but the team at least needs to have a feel for where's my rhythm. And at least during the playoffs, it's like you're facing the same team for several weeks. So there's no more of the changes night to night like you have right now. So Joe's going to pick something. He's going to stick to it, presumably.
Have anything to add?
I'll throw a softball here for the last one for Jared. I don't know if people follow Jared on Instagram. I highly recommend doing so. This is really fun to watch. Considering your travels, Jared, what's it like being the most interesting man on the Celtics beat? I
mean, I don't usually drink I can't remember the name of the beer that has the Celtics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
No. There's a beer that does a Celtics flavor. I can't remember it.
I definitely don't.
I know they had the Jack Abbey partnership.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay.
I usually drink Jack Abbey when I do. I don't usually drink beer when I do. It's Jack Abbey.
Jack Abbey.
I nailed that one. Perfect.
Yeah. We got there.
I'm about to hit the Southie parade, so I guess I'll find some Jack Abbey there.
There you go.
My first time too. I've never gone. It's too ratchet for me, but I figure what the hell, might as well.
Why not? What else are you doing on Sunday?
Man. Yeah,
I got to finish writing my story, and then I'll go check it out.
Yeah, it's not like you're getting ready to hop a flight to Sacramento or anything like that. So,
thankfully not. Although, actually, I'm sad I'm missing Sacramento. Jay King's on that trip. I'm kind of jealous of it. He's the biggest Kings fan in the world, so I'm very happy for him.
Like the beam, baby.
I want to see them like that MF beam. I want to see the Celtics win so I can see that.
Honestly, I think the Kings are the most fun storyline of 2023, and it's not even close. It's been awesome. I love it.
Close to that. Yeah. Shout out Mike Brown, easy Coach of the Year candidate.
Not even close.
De'Aaron Fox going to win Clutch Player of the Year too, most likely, unless Jayson Tatum figures his shit out, which I don't think is going to happen.
I don't think he'll take it.
I'll go full circle too. A buddy of ours, Seth, who comes on this show from time to time and is part of our Celtics in-game text chain, he wrote recently. He's like, because he watches League Pass, everything, everywhere, all the time. He's like, I got to tell you, Kyle Draper might be one of my favorite broadcasters in the league in terms of play-by-play. I was like, man, I never.
Even Mark Jones, man. Mark Jones also great.
It's a very limited sample size, obviously, when he would fill in for Gorman back when he was here. So, he's apparently crushing the opportunity out there.
Yeah, Kings fans are blessed. They've got a great team. They got a great commentary. I mean, the fact that they have Mark Jones and Kyle Draper, the fact that they have Mark Jones doing their games is like kind of nuts. Like he's my favorite guy nationally. And Drapes is really good too. So yeah, they got a stacked lineup there, and they have like a genuinely entertaining team. I don't know if they've ever played defense before, but
It's okay.
Vivek doesn't believe in defense, right? He's running
4-5,
100
baby.
possessions. Yeah.
Keep it up. Keep it up. Entertaining lineup here too when it's healthy. It's just we don't see that too often. But we're good. We're here. Valenti, Kaufman, and Weiss. So thanks for being with us. Rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff here with Celtics Beat. Thank you to all of our sponsors for this program. Obviously, without you, we would be here, but it wouldn't be nearly the same. So we hope you guys all stick around with us. And without the listeners, we literally would just be talking to ourselves. So we'll see you later. Hopefully the Celtics finish strong here, but we'll check in again after the next few games.